Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. So thankful that you took time to join us. My name is Bob Chenette, and I'm one of the regional sales directors for JSCM Group. And what we want to do today is we want to share with you some of the things that we're seeing, some of the things that we're learning about business email compromise. And as we get into this, let me just share a little bit about JSCM Group and who we are. We are a boutique cybersecurity firm. What that means is we only do cybersecurity. That's our specialty. We kind of stay in our lane, and this is where we specialize and come alongside our clients. And we've been doing it for a long time. We've been doing it for over 23 years. We kind of joke around internally. We were doing it long before it was cyber, and certainly long before it was cool, but it is our specialty. And so we work with clients across a number of industries. And this particular issue, business email compromise, impacts all of them. And so we're seeing this across many of our clients and across all the industries that we work with. And so today is about education. It's about awareness. It's about helping you to recognize this type of an attack, and more importantly, what you can be doing to help to protect yourself. And one of the things that what we'll do as we go through this, because we do have quite a few people joining our webinar today, what we'll do is we'll keep our cameras off. We'll put everybody on mute. So it'll be a little bit of a one-way conversation, but I want you to still be able to participate. So if you have questions that pop up, feel free to use the chat. We have our moderator, Felton, who will be able to field or kind of capture some of those questions. And we're certainly going to have time at the end for any questions that you may have. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. And let me share what the agenda is. And we're just going to start out with what the heck is BEC. So we're going to talk a little bit about what it is and then how it works. And then what are some of the most common tactics that we see the bad guys using? And then from that, we want to give you what are some of the red flags? What are some of the warning signs that you should be looking for when this type of an attack is taking place? We want to share with you can you protect your business? What are some of the things that you can do to help protect from this type of an attack? And then just some key action steps, some simple things that you can do right after this webinar to help yourself be more protected. And as I shared, we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. So what is it? Okay, here's what it is. This is kind of the definition of it. You'll hear the acronym BEC. It's Business Email Compromise. And it really is a sophisticated attack, a sophisticated scam. And it does target both businesses and individuals. The key is it's asking to perform a legitimate transfer of funds. It's making a request to transfer funds. And so that's one of the things that makes it distinctive. And it comes in a couple different forms. And these are some of the most common imposter types that you're going to see in BEC. The first one, it's about 22% of the attacks are a lookalike domain. And so that example is where there's a nearly identical, it's slightly altered domain name that has been registered for the sole purpose of deception. So the bad guys are registering hundreds of thousands of lookalike domains every year. And the sole reason they're doing that is to be able to do these types of attacks. A smaller percentage is the compromised account. And a compromised account is when the threat actor gains access to the user's credentials, or they find another way to act on behalf of that individual. This is a little bit more complicated to do. That's why it's a lower percentage. But also, if this was to happen to somebody, if their account was compromised, they would be vulnerable and susceptible to numerous types of attacks, not just BEC. But for BEC, what we see by far is what's called display name deception. And you can see here there's over 60% of the attacks are falling into this category. And sometimes that name deception can be a brand, and many times it's an individual. And what we're seeing is this category here, this display name deception for the individual. This is the area where we're seeing the most increase. This is where you'll see this CEO fraud or CFO fraud. This is where this is occurring. And to give you an idea of how this is growing, these are some statistics. We'll share a little bit so you get the full picture of this. This first one is according to the FBI, and the FBI does a report every year. It's called the IC3 report. And this one's the one from 2021. I'm going to show you some statistics from 2022, but this one is showing that a third of all cybercrime losses is CEO fraud or BEC. Now, this is in the US, but it's a staggering number, $2.4 billion. This statistic here, this is CEO fraud specific, that the increase from 1 year to the next, it was over 4,000 more attempts. It's like a 35% increase. But again, it's very specific. It's CEO fraud that's rising here. And then this one's just a staggering number because this is a global number, and this is for all of BEC. The losses have surpassed $43 billion globally. That's coming from the FBI. So this is big business, and it's growing. And the reason it's growing is because of mobile devices. And if you think about the size of this display on a mobile device, let's just use your phone. We all have the phones. And just think about when you're getting an email from somebody, because the display size, that display surface is smaller, you might see the person's name, you may see their display name, but you don't get to see the domain because the display kind of cuts it off. And so we're all busy and we're moving fast, and we're looking at an email that's coming from somebody's name who we know, and we're responding to it. And so that's why this is growing as rapidly as it is. And here's some of the statistics from the most recent FBI IC3. And by the way, IC3 stands for Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3. And this is where people can submit when they've been subject to any type of a scam. And so the statistics here are around BEC. And again, this is for 2022, nearly a third, almost a third of all cyber crime related financial losses came from BEC. That's a huge number. And you can see here now it's over 2.7 billion. This is for the US. The number of complaints around BEC tripled year over year. The losses are 80 times greater than ransomware. And again, because this is very, very effective. And then 88% of businesses experience a supplier-based email attack. So this is clearly on the rise. And just to kind of put a bow on this part of it, is 71% of organizations have experienced a BEC attack over the last year. So it's very, very common. And another statistic is that about 1/5 of the employees fall for the phishing tricks. So it's not only highly lucrative, it's very, very effective. And so that's why we want to spend some time and educate on what to look out for, and most importantly, how does it work? So here it is. It starts with the bad guys, and they're going to do what's called research and reconnaissance. They will take some time to find out as much information as they can about the organization and the individuals in that organization that they're targeting. And, if you just think about social media and what's out there on the web, and just think of things like tools like LinkedIn, information is available for the bad guys to gather. And so that's the first step. They will do the research and reconnaissance, and then they will do a spoof on an email, and they will send that email. And many of the times, in this case, it's requesting a payment or a transfer of funds in some sort. The person follows those instructions, does what the email says to do, clicks on the links that are there, and then processes the payment. The bad guy gets the money, and that's how it happens. And give you a little detail on different ways that they're doing this. There's 3 common tactics that are used, and we're going to dive into each one of these just to show you some examples. We'll put up some emails so you get a chance to see what they look like and just give you a sense for what to be watching out for. But the first category is impersonation of the executives or the vendors. That's the category that's growing rapidly. That's the CEO fraud. Some email spoofing techniques, and then a little bit around the social engineering tactics that are being used. But let's take a look at the CEO fraud first. The way that this works, or the flow of this, is very similar to what we just showed. You'll have a bad guy posing as the CEO. They will send a phishing email or a spoofed email requesting funds. Typically, it will go to the finance department, or sometimes a very specific person within finance. They will wire the money, and the bad guys walk away with the funds. Now, to show you just a little bit further how this can happen, again, the bad guys are going to be doing the reconnaissance and the research. And when they do the phish, it can happen in a couple different areas. These are the departments that we see the most. Finance, for sure. To the CFO. Sometimes it's directly to that person. And it can also be in human resources. And sometimes they're not looking just for money, but gift cards have become a popular target as well. And so the phish takes place, and the email goes to any one of these areas. And then the response, honestly, the response is typically the same. There's a sense of urgency here. So the person receiving this email says, I better do it. It's coming from the CEO. I'll take care of this right away. And they go ahead and they do. They follow the instructions. And the damage is what you can imagine. I mean, certainly the fund, whatever funds have been transferred, in most cases, like this is 96% of the cases, the money is not recovered. So the money is gone, but then there can be other ramifications. People being held responsible for this, lawsuits may happen, just the reputation of the organization. So it's really important to just think before you click. And this is what email CEO fraud looks like. Now let's give you an example here. So here's an email from the CEO, and the display name is the same as the signature name, right? So on the surface, this looks legitimate, right? Looks like the same person. But when you look at the domain name, and the example we have here, this is an example called typo squatted. And not how clear it is on your screen, but this P is not an actual P from our alphabet. This is the Greek letter rho, which looks like a P, but it's slightly different. And so it is not the same domain name. And they've altered it slightly. And so you can imagine if you're moving quickly and just make believe you're looking at that on a mobile phone, you're not going to be able to distinguish that. And even some email security systems do not catch this. So it's a very subtle change, but in this case, they've changed the domain and they're creating urgency. And that's what you're going to see in all of these examples. There's a sense of urgency here that is prompting the person to do whatever they're being asked to do and to do it right away. This is an example of impersonation, but this time, this is when the bad guy is impersonating a vendor. The process is very similar. They will do the research and reconnaissance. They will gain access to the supplier's email account. They will watch, they will listen, they will learn, and eventually they will send an email acting as if they're the supplier to their potential target. And then when that target responds and transfers the money, some cases it's data, most of the time it's money, that money will be given or delivered directly to the bad guys. Here's an example of one. In this case, Robin is the supplier. Actually, Robin is the CFO of the supplier. So this email is coming from, or looks like it's coming from the CFO of the supplier, and it's going to the company asking them to pay an invoice. And the deadline's here, sense of urgency. We have to get this done. Can you wire over the funds as soon as you can? Here's the invoice. So you can see why somebody receiving this, if they're not looking closely, may just respond all with good intent, all with positive intent of trying to solve a problem or get something done or to follow through. But you can see they're subtle enough that they're easy to miss. Now this one, the display name spoofing, is again the name on the display matches, no problem, matches the signature. But if you were to look at the email domain name, it's different. It's different than the boss's actual email. And then, of course, here they're asking you to click on something that will take you where you're not supposed to go. And I think many people realize, but if you hovered over this hyperlink, you would see where it was taking you. And when you do that, you would be able to tell, hey, this is not legitimate. This is an example of the domain spoofing. We saw this example a little earlier with the Greek letter rho for P, but here, the only difference in these two emails is the domain name, and you can see it's just one letter different. Again, if you're moving quickly, you're looking at a small display, you may not even notice it. Everything else looks legitimate. So domain spoofing can be very, very tricky. To give an example, the combinations are endless of what they can do with these lookalike domains. And so in this example, the actual domain is fishlabs.com. That's the real domain name. And you can see all the variations that they've been able to come up with that, again, if you're moving quickly and not paying attention, you may not even notice it. So it's very, very common, and it's rather easy for the attackers to do. This one is an example of when it's a reply to address spoofing. And so what's happening here, this looks like something that's coming that's legitimate, that everybody needs to update their passwords, check here to do that. It looked like it's coming from IT. And when you look at it, what you'll see is the domain was spoofed. It was not the domain of the organization. Again, there's this urgency. Got to do it now. Has to happen immediately. Click here whenever you see these types of links, that should be a red flag. And when you hover over it, you would see that it is not taking you to the proper place. Pretexting is another example. What pretexting is when the bad guys are creating either a false pretext, or think of it like a false scenario. They're creating a false scenario to manipulate people into divulging sensitive information, or in some cases performing an action that they normally wouldn't do. So this is an example. Something coming from the IT department is a common example. So in this one saying, hey, everybody, everybody's got to go in and read the update to the code of conduct agreement, and everybody's got to do it. Everybody's got to do it within 48 hours. And so people would go and be clicking on this and giving away confidential information, sensitive information like their passwords. Urgency and fear is a thread that's through all of these. This is an example that came looking as if it's coming from the Better Business Bureau. And so, again, person receiving this sees a case number, sees Better Business Bureau, wants to do the right thing. There's a complaint, and wants to make sure that they're following through on this. And so, without taking the time to really look at this carefully, they may go ahead and click on that link and be taken to an area where they don't want to go. This is the CFO fraud again, where the CFO is saying, hey, are you here? Let me know. I need your help. I have an appointment payment today. And just sending it directly to the employee. And this one is from Microsoft. And this one, I was reading about it, and Microsoft was saying, we're really, I guess we're glad that people think that we will be able to alert them personally if there was some type of ransomware on their device. But there's absolutely no way that Microsoft is going to be able to do that, nor do they do that. But again, unsuspecting employees may get something like this. It looks legitimate. It says it's Microsoft, and oh my goodness, it's about ransomware, and I want to do the right thing. And so they may click on this. And this in this screenshot, you can see when you hover above the link, it is not taking you to Microsoft. And so these are just some of the ways and some of the things to be looking out for, some of the common tactics that are being used to fool people into doing the transfers and in divulging sensitive information. So the good news is there are some things that you can do. And what we want to do, we want to show you some of the red flags. Some of them we actually touched on already, but we'll kind of pull them all together. Some ways that you can protect your business, and also what are some recommended solutions. So for the red flags, one of them is if there's any unexpected change in your payment instructions. If you're being asked to make a payment around something that is not the normal way that your company or your business does it, or it's outside the way that you would normally follow that workflow, that's a red flag. Urgency. This pressure to do it right away. It has to be done now. When you see that kind of urgency, pause. Just stop and think. It doesn't mean it's not. Maybe it is legitimate, but it's a red flag. So just be careful and take a moment to check and verify. Any unusual email requests or language unusual language that you would see in the email. That part used to be easier to detect. You used to get an email and it'd be misspellings and, grammar wasn't correct and punctuation, things like that. It'll be a little more obvious. I will tell you, they're getting more and more sophisticated, especially with AI, that part may not jump out. But if you did have something where the language didn't seem right, and certainly it was an unusual type of an email request, that's a red flag or a warning sign. And then any changes in communication patterns, meaning if you normally don't get emails from the CFO asking you to make a payment, or from the CEO asking you to go pick up gift cards, anything that's outside the normal communication patterns, that's a red flag. Now, what can you do to help protect yourself? And there are some things, and I believe some of you are already doing some of these things. And if you are, keep doing them, because they actually do make a difference. The first one is training or awareness. Some of it's as simple as what we're sharing today. As people become more aware and sensitive to these tactics, they're going to be able to prevent them. So if you're not doing any kind of employee training or awareness, that could be a great place to start. Multi-factor authentication, MFA. If you are not doing this, do it. Do it. I know it's a pain in the neck. I know nobody likes it. But I'm telling you, it not only helps protect you against BEC, but in a whole host of other areas. And it's a fairly simple way to add a layer of protection. So if you're not doing MFA, go ahead and implement that. That will absolutely make a difference. Following the email authentication protocols, there's a number of them there, but making sure you're following those protocols, and that's more with the IT departments, making sure that that's happening. And then also intelligent email security. And there are products and services that can help you with this. And I want to give you an example. This is an example of our email solution. This is our cloud-based email filtering service, and we call it closed port email. And it does all the things that you would expect as far as from an email security platform. And so we're making sure that the configurations are including the email protocols. We're making sure there's content filtering. We're making sure that there's quarantines and block lists and safe lists, and it can be customized for your business. But one of the things that we have layered in to our solution is impersonation detection that can guard against BEC. And it does that by identifying within your organization who are the people that have access to the funds, to payments, or to the money. Who are the people that have access to the records? Maybe it's like in the HR department. What are some of your wire transfer procedures? What are some of the policy procedures you have as an organization? And we can bake that into your email protection. And so when something happens outside of that, it's going to flag it. It's going to quarantine it. And so this is just an example that there are now solutions, we're going to call them smart email solutions, that can protect against specifically BEC. Now let's do some key things that you can do. These are some things you can take back today, you can share with your team. Fairly easy place to start. First one, verify request that's asking for sensitive information or transactions. Just take a moment. You get a request to do a transfer payment, just verify, check and verify, just to make sure. Think before you click. Double check the email address and the domains. Now, that may not be for every single email that you get. We're not suggesting that, but what we are suggesting is when you get specific requests for payments, specific requests for sensitive information, specific requests that has to be done immediately, those things we talked about earlier, things outside the normal flow, absolutely double check the address and the domain. Encrypt your sensitive data. Again, some of you may already be doing that. If you're not, it's another great way, another layer of protection you can have in there by making sure the sensitive data is encrypted. Certainly we can support clients with that if you needed help with that, but that's a nice, easy way to really add some extra protection. And then make sure you establish your clear communication protocols. So everybody understands what is that workflow? What is the normal way we're going to do things? So that way, when something falls outside of that, you're aware and it's clear. And so that may require some internal discussions and just walking through that. But once you've set that up, it does give everybody clear boundaries and guidelines to follow. And it makes these things that are the one-off, the things that are happening outside of that, stand out. So those are some of the things that you can do. We certainly are here to help with these types of things. It's what we do. And so if you have questions or you want to explore what our BEC solution looks like, we would love to talk to you about that. But what we want to do right now is see if there's any questions that you might have. I know we have a fairly large group, so we'll try to, if there are some questions, we'll try to take them. Let me see if I can see him. I'm going to reach out to Felton. Felton is our moderator, but I know he was having some challenges with the microphone. Okay. All right, I got you. Thank you, Felton. You just responded in the chat. So at this point, we don't see any questions, which is okay. And what we want to do is give you our information. My name and contact information is there. You certainly can reach out to jscmgroup.com. Actually, it's not a bad place to go. Also, if you go to our website, you'll be able to see an entire section on email security. That's a really good resource, and you can perhaps get some of your questions answered. But by all means, if you need any support or you have anything else, please feel free to reach out to us. That's why we're here. So I want to say thank you. We appreciate very much you taking the time out to join us. I hope it was helpful. I hope we were able to answer some of the questions and maybe give you some good best practices. So once again, thank you for joining us, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day.